everyone. We are back with another painting tutorial. I hope everybody had a happy new year and wonderful holiday season. It's been a long time coming with this. Went on vacation, was away from my minis, but I had promised a tutorial on how to do a longer paint job on the Clegane yellow if you weren't so fond of the idea of doing ink washes over the brown-orange color to get what we have on here. So, what we're going to do is we're going to work on getting a yellow that looks more like this. So, it's, I think, better than the yellows we get down here. We get a little brighter color. It's a little smoother gradation, but it's a lot more work. So, if this isn't of interest to you, my next video should be starting with the Starks. I've actually painted a whole bunch of my Starks now, so I'm going to go through that very quickly, and those are fast models to paint. Relying a lot more on the airbrush than I am with the Lannister troops. Being that the Starks are mostly supposed to be gray and white, well, we're already getting that, but we will get into that later. Alright, so we are going to be using only a few colors from the P3 range to get that yellow, as well as the yellow ink. And we're also going to be using some Gnome oil from Citadel. So the first step we are going to have in this is we're going to base coat our yellow. And for our yellow base coat, we're going to use Rucksack Tan. So I'm going to have to paint a little quicker today because I did not bring my wet palette with me to my painting location. So I'm just using a paper plate, proving that you don't need any kind of specialized equipment to do this. So on your paper plate, go ahead and just add a little bit of matte medium. It's always great to help with your glazes because you're going to be adding water. And if you just add water, it's going to turn into a wash. And if you just add matte medium, you're going to get streaky paint. So either you need to use water and dry your brush off and just only have a damp brush, or you need to try to give a little bit more body to your paint. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and I'm starting with the number 2 brush. I'm going to go ahead and put some paint down. And all I'm looking to do on this is get a base coat with coverage, because I still want to see those shadows poking through, because it'll make it a lot easier to paint in the shadows once we go to enliven this yellow and make it look a little more three-dimensional. Okay, so got our paint. Let's go ahead and begin. Alright, so all we're going to do is we're going to start coming across here and putting in our base coat. When you're doing this, you want good coverage, but you don't want to have to go back over the top of anything you've already painted it. If you go over it too soon, it's going to be wet and it's going to peel off and you're going to get streaks. If it's too dry when you go over it, you're adding another layer of paint and you're going to add to the opacity because we're not doing an ink wash. And we want some of those shadows to still show through, even though we're going to repaint them in, it'll still be a good guideline for us to work with our paint job on. Keep going here in the shadow. Like I said, I don't want that to dry up. Okay. We don't need to be terribly clean. We're going to cut those dogs back in afterwards. Not too worried about them. There, get that a little bit. And we're going to end up making those holes a very deep brown when we get to them. One thing, as I was painting the other side, that I noticed is sometimes you don't get your yellow up around the legs. So just make sure you put a little extra effort to get some yellow around the dog's legs so you have full coverage. Just looking at one of them as I was doing my last shadow, and I was like, oh wow, that's still completely white right there. this and kind of blend in what we've got. Use my mold line is where I cut my painting last time. Figure if I'm going to get all these mold lines on my models, I might as well make use of them. Alright, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit the top with this base coat too. Although the top's going to end up being purely my highlight color. Alright, so we have a fully base coated yellow. And as you can see, some of the shadows are still poking through there. We don't have perfect coverage, but we have enough to turn everything to a nice golden color, desaturated as it is. We want to work with a desaturated yellow when we're doing this because I want to use the ink to brighten everything up, and instead of just painting with regular yellows in a brighter tone to where I wouldn't need the ink, I think the ink helps to give a little harmony to the piece and blends in any paint strokes that you had that weren't quite perfect in their blending. Okay, so we have the base coat. The next step is going to be we're going to use P3's Moldy Ochre. So again, we're going to get the paint, lay it down on our palette. And we're going to work up our highlights. Add a little bit of matte medium, get some water. This one we want to be a little looser than the last coat, so we can swirl it around a little bit and blend it out as it's there. Okay, let me look at this. We're still a little damp. So, I was hoping this would dry because it's kind of dry in here, but we're not completely dry yet. So, we've got hair dryer, and we're just going to go ahead and hit that real quick to ensure that we're dry. Okay. That should be enough to let us start putting our highlight color on. Alright, let's go ahead and reposition everything. Alright, we're going to start here at the end since it was the first thing we painted. And I'm just going to go ahead and pick up this edge. And we're going to take the other brush and blend that right back out. Just work it into the other color. There is a raised area right there. I want to make sure we get that. And just blend it back in. A little raised spot. And we are going to go back over these raised spots again after we ink. Because the highlight color, we're going to end up using it without the yellow ink on it to really add a little bit of punch. Man, I got some yellow on my finger there. Okay, so we've got some highlights there with our yellow, and let's continue forward. Alright, so our light, as we know from these models, comes from the top left, so we are going to go ahead and start hitting these. That edge is definitely going to be bright. I'm just going to go ahead and hit this whole area in our bright yellow. Once we have that in there, we're just going to come through and blend out our highlight. Now you might be saying, hey, wait, that's kind of streaky yet. That is okay, especially as we get deeper in, because we are going to add shadows back in there. As you see, we're going into that fold. It's part of why this process takes a little longer, is there's a lot of back and forth. blend it, swirl it around a little bit. These highlights here on these little ridges in the fold are probably going to get shaded over. I just want to brighten them up because they would catch some top light. I'm seeing that where the airbrush had hit it, there was some top light caught right there. And that's why we have guides with our airbrush zenithal highlighting. Alright, so we've got that level of highlighting in. And the next big level of highlights is going to be up here in the front. So we're just going to go ahead and catch this. I think this whole piece right here is going to be fairly bright. And then we're just going to go ahead and blend that into our base tone as it comes around the curve there. Alright, and so we've got a little bit of yellow. And let me go ahead and catch these with our highlight color. This I'm just going to go ahead and place it and drag it down to each of the folds. That way the pigment concentrates at the bottom of my brush stroke, which is where the most light would catch. Alright, and we'll go ahead and just catch the top here with our highlight color. And we'll hit the top edges of the tatters too. Okay, there we go. Our first level of highlights are on there. That is just to brighten it up so we don't lose them as we do our shadows. Alright, so the next step is going to be moving everything over to our first shadow. Our first shadow color is going to be based on Guncore Brown. Okay, so with Guncore Brown, we're going to go ahead and grab some of that color. Place it down. The brush is too wet. There we go. Grab our Guncore Brown. Brush is dry. We're going to take a little bit of our medium, get that in there. Alright, since I'm not looking to base coat this one, I'm going to keep the paint a little thicker than I usually do. Let me show you that on the palette. And there goes the ink, so we know how runny that is, but you can see that the brown's holding up there. And we've got some translucency. But we want it with a little more body. So we're going to be cutting in shadows and blending them right back out with a wet brush. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start here in the back again. And this whole curve right here is going to be out of the light. One of our starkest shadows. We're just going to go ahead and line that in. And then we are going to... Sure, I'm not getting off camera here. I'm just going to go ahead and blend that back out. And if the blend isn't quite to the gradient you want, don't be afraid to add a little bit more pigment and keep working that blend until you get it to a point where you are satisfied. Alright, And I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more onto the other side. We're going to start blending that brown onto the back. Just like that. We've got a big fold right here. Up at the top where that has a chance to dry. Blend that color. Push it down to that fold. A little bit of a fold here. See, it's a little darker. And cut that in. That bottom shade, just kind of blend it out. Add a little bit more in there. You're going to notice there's some diminishing returns on here as it stays wet. Once you get too much fluid on there, all of a sudden your blends are going to get a lot more difficult. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and hit the undercuts of the flag here in my first shadow color. I'm going to hit that shadow color into each of the holes. Hit the undercuts here. A little bit more. Sorry if I looked like I was drifting off camera there again. Alright, so we're going to add some more shadows. So this area right here is definitely going to be more shadowed than either the two raised areas. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to work this part first. Laid down our brown. Now we're going to come through and blend that out. All right. So as you can see, we've got a nice blend there from highlight to mid-tone to our first shadow. Now we need to take that shadow we just started placing and build it the other direction, because that whole area is going to be in shadow. We're going to do this a little more carefully than that last one, because we have those little bits of highlight and I don't want to lose them completely. Alright, so we're going to do that, and we're going to drag some of that color up onto this surface right here. Alright, we had a little bit of jump in time there. Camera filled up with data, so this is going to be spliced together, so I'm sure you saw a little bit of a camera angle jump. But while we were out of data, I just continued working that shadow just a little bit. And I think we need to add a little bit more of the highlight right here and try to cut that back in. So we're going to do that right now. So we're going to take our highlight color. I'm going to make a mess of it on my palette. I'm going to have to get some more highlight color. Camera. Okay, I think we're ready to go now. I'm going to go ahead and just place my highlight. I mainly want to make sure I blend it down into that shadow I was just placing. highlight just a little bit more. As I said, this is a lot of back and forth. Blend that just a bit. I don't want to bring that highlight too far into that shadow because it's a pretty harsh curve right there in the flag. So we want to leave that gradient a little harder and, I don't know, more steep than some of the smoother gradients we would do, like as we have the shadow going up into our colors here. Okay. Let's go back to our shadow color. We're going to finish up our shading. Alright, so all we really got to pick out at this point is some of these folds in the flag. So first thing I want to do is I want to bring attention to the fold right here. We're going to just paint a smooth line down there. Take my other brush and we're going to use that paint to blend some of that line into those folds that we see. Where there's no fold, we're going to push the paint closer to the edge. Where there is a fold, we're going to pull the paint out. If you need a little more paint, just go ahead and add a little bit more pigment. Alright, we had a little bit of a camera jump angle and this is going to get spliced in. My camera ran out of memory, so I stopped recording and I was in the middle of painting, so I really wasn't paying attention. But we just keep doing the shadows as we were. When we get to that top edge, I want to bring out where the staff is. The best way to do that is you take your shadow color and you're just going to drop a line of rather wet paint down here because you want it to stay wet while you blend it out. And then you take your blending brush and you're going to push it where the highlights are, and under the highlight you're going to pull it. And so then you'll get that kind of detail in the line. Then over here, where we had all of those highlights from the ridges that should be catching a lot of light, remember we had the bright yellow and we were pulling it towards each of those edges. So we're going to go kind of the opposite with our shadow color. We're going to take the shadow colors, start towards the middle with a almost controlled wash is what I would say it is. You're going to push it up, you're going to push it up, and push it up. So that will help make those highlights at the very edges really pop out. And then you can just go ahead and drop a little bit of that shadow color and that controlled wash into each of those ridges where the rivets are. Those rivets, of course, will get picked out in brass or something when we're done. Okay, so, and over here, if I think my shadows got a little out of control. Actually, I see a little bit more out of control, so we will show you a little bit more of how we do the back and forth blending. So now I'm looking at the camera screen and seeing that maybe we can do a little better. So right up here, I think this is going to catch a lot more light. Just going to go ahead and place our color. Wet brush. And there we go. That's rather three-dimensional. Okay, so the last layer of shadow is going to be with Umbral Umber. There we are, Umbral Umber. Hold on here, adjusting camera settings. All right. Okay, so we get the Umbral Umber. I'm going to take some of that on our brush, place it in. We don't need to be as worried about the matte medium on this one. Just add a little bit of water. We want it to flow easy. We're going to blend a lot of this out. This is just for the deepest shadows. Alright, so I'm going to cut in. We're going to start at the very back. I'm going to cut in the very deepest folds in the back of the cloth. We're going to hit the bottom. we're going to drop some into the little tears in the banner. And our first shadow with this. This side catches a lot more light than the back, so we're going to be pretty sparing with this color. I want to put some right here. That looks like it would be in deeper shadow. Alright, so, and this, we're blending, but we're doing more of a push. I want to push these colors into a smaller area, because I want it to be pretty much where the shadows are is where I want to keep them at this point. I really just want to get that umber into the biggest folds here in the shadows. So if it's an underfold in a shadow, we need to push that shadow a little bit more. We're going to do that here on the underneath. Put a little dot in there. And we are going to blend that dot out. Just darkening it a little bit. Little dot there. And just trying to make the highlights stand out a little bit more than they were before. Underneath here, shadow that up a little bit. Alright. And that is gonna be about it. If you want to at this point, to play with this darker brown a little bit more, and take some, and you're gonna do a controlled wash. So very wet, you can drop it into some of the shadows that would be caused by these hounds. You can take or leave this one. I mean, it's a banner. The hounds would not be standing out from the banner. But they sculpted it 3D to make it easier to paint. You might as well push that 3 dimensions. Now, maybe Westeros has some kind of magic material. There we go. Alright, so we have our shadows. That's about as dark as it's going to get. Next part is going to be our wash of yellow ink. Yellow ink is the same stuff we were using before, the Liquitex Yellow Orange. Give that a shake. And you just need a tiny bit. It goes a long way on this project. And we are just going to wash this area. When I say wash it, you're aiming for even coverage over the entire banner. Don't just let it wash into the crevices. You're looking for coverage. This is going to filter everything up to a more gold color from our very desaturated, washed out yellows. So if you're going to leave anything that doesn't hit it, maybe don't hit the deepest shadows, but I think even those... I'm having nothing but video issues here. I keep running out of memory. I need to delete some more stuff. I thought I had enough. So, as I was just saying before that cutoff, you need to make sure there's a nice even coat of the yellow. You're just looking for even coverage. You can skip it in the deepest shadows if you want to, but I like to add it everywhere as it adds a nice bit of homogeneous tone to the entire model. The only spot I didn't hit was the underneath with the yellow. I let that sit as that dark brown by itself. So, there we go. We have one yellow banner to match the other yellow banner. So the only part left is going to be to re-highlight. So we're going to go in again with just a little bit of our moldy ochre color. And this time I'm going to go down to using a number 1 brush so I have a finer point. big things I want to pick out on this is the edges that are really going to catch light. Go ahead and edge highlight there. Those spots where you look at, knowing the direction of your light, where is the light really going to pick up? Okay. Hit that. Hit that. Hit that. Right there. About that edge. And then everything's a little wet, so it should still blend by itself fairly nicely. If not, just use your blending brush. And we're going to go ahead and drop some highlights down into the top. Those back out. So we don't want to ruin that shadow, but we want to show that there's sunlight collecting as this billows a little bit up towards that tear. So we want to do a hard edge highlight on the bottom of the tear because the sun's going to catch there. We're also going to add sunlight in a more gentle gradient as the cloth would billow towards the top of that rip. Really help increase the three-dimensionality of those tears in the cloth. But yeah, that is it. We have yellow. So the last step for this, which I'm not going to film because it's pretty self-explanatory, is when we're doing the actual hounds on here. I think the best way to do that is, as we have discussed earlier in some of the other models, I think, is go through with the coal black by Privateer Press. You're going to use that color and go ahead and base coat it. From there, I think Nuln Oil is your best bet to help make it a little more three-dimensional. You don't want to because it's cloth, you go for that. It's whatever you want to do. But a little bit of Nuln Oil keeps you from having to blend everything out, and it will keep everything as reading just black. If that is not your style, you can use those techniques I just showed you with the wet blending, and you can paint it blue. And once you've painted the whole thing blue and the base coat is dry, you can put like a dab of black right here in these edges and blend it back out. But yeah, this right here, those are just done in the blue. I'm letting light itself do what little bit of highlighting there is on that side, because I don't want those to look as three-dimensional as they are on the sculpt. So, I mean, that's always something you can do. Bring out those highlights when you want to make things look a little more three-dimensional, and when you want to make things a little less three-dimensional, just paint it flat and it'll help it sink back into the background and lose some of its shape. It's exactly what we're usually trying to get away with, or away from, when we're painting models. So there we go. That is Clegane Yellow, and we'll go ahead and come back here in just a moment, and I will do a group shot of all the Clegane models together. Alright, and as promised, the group shot of House Clegane. There in the back, I've got my white cloak hound that's not quite ready yet, but We've got mounted Gregor, which I used the blended yellows throughout. And the metallics just as described in the other tutorials, just with a little more focus on the blending. I have this Gregor, who was done with just a lot more of white and an ink wash over. His yellows were done the same as the method I described for the normal troops. The troops, but they're mostly done with orange, and then the washes of yellow to make the orange turn a little more brown. And faces, hair, etc. done with techniques that I've already described on the Lannisters. So there we go. Bases are not done. I will be doing brass bases and making them match the movement trays. I started to do some of the work here. I got rid of that white, the blue that I was using. Didn't want to dry clear, which is what I thought I was going to do. That's what I get for using something other than Elmer's. So, but yeah, we're going to have grass across all of them, and the bases won't look as red when they're done. That's the idea, anyhow. But there we go. One unit. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and as I said, the next thing coming out is going to be painting a Stark Sworn Sword. We're going to look at the Bannerman, and we will possibly also do the alternate model of the Captain. And then just also as a project that's currently being worked is my great axes, and we will eventually do a tutorial with the speed paint of the Berserkers. I decided it would be my test for a speed painted pink. No, not pink, but they're supposed to be flaming red, but I don't want them to be as saturated as crimson as the Lannisters. So they're a little more pink than the Lannisters are, to make it look like they're a little more sun faded. But yeah, that's going to be the next one of the next tutorials coming out is going to be looking at House Umber, as well as looking at House Tully. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks a lot, and catch you next time.